Good evening and welcome to NTD UK News. I'm Stuart Leeson. Here are today's top stories. Prime Minister Boris Johnson marks 5 years on from the UK's vote to leave the European Union. The government considers letting football VIPs in for the Euro 2020 finals without having to quarantine. And Channel 4 may be up for sale as ministers consult on privatising the broadcaster. Prime Minister Boris Johnson marked today the 5th anniversary since the UK voted to leave the European Union while addressing Parliament. He urged EU citizens who've not yet applied for residency status to quickly do so.
Mr. Speaker, today marks 5 years since this country voted to leave the European Union. It has allowed us to take back control of the issues that matter to the people of the United Kingdom. It has given us the freedom to establish 8 free ports across the country, driving new investment, to develop the fastest vaccine rollout in Europe, to protect and invest in jobs and renewal across every part of the UK, to control our immigration system, and to sign a historic trade deal with Australia.
Johnson said over 5.6 million EU citizens have applied for residency status under the government's settlement scheme. Since completing its exit from the EU late last year, Britain is ending priority for citizens from the bloc over people from elsewhere. It's to meet a pledge made during the 2016 Brexit referendum, and the deadline's in a week's time on 30th of June. Those that miss the deadline will have 28 days to prove they were living in Britain before 31st of December last year. Without this, they will not be eligible for work or benefits and will lose the right to services such as free non-urgent healthcare. Johnson said leaving the EU will allow Britain to shape a better future for British people. A minister says the government is in talks with UEFA over COVID rules for visiting football VIPs who might not need to quarantine. NTD's David English has the story.
The government is in discussion with UEFA to allow football VIPs into the UK for the Euro 2020 semi-finals and final without having to quarantine. Labour's John Healey says any agreement would be one rule for important people and one rule for the rest. Media Minister John Whittingdale defends the government's position.
Yes, there will be some people coming in, but they will be coming in to attend the game. They'll be under the strict restrictions as to what else they can do. They're not just able to come in and travel around Britain. They come in to attend a match and then go away again.
UEFA is pushing for 2,500 officials, politicians, sponsors and broadcasters to be allowed into the UK without having to quarantine, but only to attend football matches.
We wouldn't have been able to host the tournament at Wembley if we hadn't allowed the players and people associated with the teams to come in to do so.
Whittingdale says special dispensation had to have been granted in order to host the matches. UEFA welcomes the news that the UK government will allow 60,000 fans at Wembley for the Euro 2020 semi-finals and final. Downing Street says Public Health England is still in discussion with UEFA over the final details, but any breaches of COVID restrictions by UEFA officials would be punished with fines. The Prime Minister's official spokesman says the government wouldn't do anything that compromises the safety of the public. He also says VIPs will be subject to a strict code of conduct, including daily testing, staying in designated hotels, and use of designated private transport. They also need to follow the UK's COVID restrictions, including social distancing, face coverings, test and trace, and isolation. The spokesperson doesn't rule out international fans also being able to attend Euro matches without having to follow quarantine rules. David English, NTD News.
As the UK government agrees to increase capacity at Wembley for the finals, European leaders express concerns and point to rising COVID cases. NTD's Eddie Aiken brings us the latest on this.
UEFA welcomed the government's decision to increase crowd capacity for the semi-finals and the final of Euro 2020. Capacity will be at 75% or 60,000 for the final 3 games next month at Wembley Stadium. UEFA's president thanked the government and called the championship a beacon of hope to reassure people that we are returning to a more normal way of life. Though not everyone is happy. The German Chancellor expressed concern on Tuesday over safety due to rising case numbers in the UK.
I hope that UEFA acts responsibly, and I would not find it a good thing to see packed stadiums. And I support all of the efforts of the UK government in implementing the necessary hygiene measures.
Merkel's statement comes one day after the Italian Prime Minister called for the final to be moved from London to Rome.
Yes, I will try to stop the final being held in a country where infections are rising quickly.
All ticket holders at Wembley will need to have either a negative COVID-19 test or proof of full vaccination. UEFA said last week it had a contingency plan for moving the final if restrictions on fans were not eased. Budapest was floated as one option. On Tuesday, football's governing body said it had no intention to replace Wembley. Eddie Aitken, NTD News.
And UEFA won't light up Munich Stadium in rainbow colours for the match between Germany and Hungary tonight. That's after requests to light up the arena as a sign of solidarity with the LGBTQ community. On Tuesday, football's governing body released a statement explaining their decision. The group says all forms of discrimination are a stain on society, but it maintains that it is a politically and religiously neutral organisation. And given that the move would be a message aimed at the Hungarian parliament, that makes it political, so they cannot do it. This comes after the Hungarian government passed a law that it says ensures only parents have the right to educate their kids on sexual orientation. And in other news, the government is to launch a consultation on the sale of Channel 4. But the station's boss warns of irreversible damage. NTD's David English brings us this report.
The government today announced a consultation into selling Channel 4. The Department for Digital Culture, Media and Sport revealed the move after Channel 4 bosses were quizzed by MPs yesterday. It says moving the broadcaster into private ownership and changing its remit could ensure its future success and sustainability.
Culture Secretary Oliver Dowden says the time has come to look at how we can unleash the potential of our public service broadcasters. However, Channel 4 CEO Alex Mahon warned MPs that the broadcaster could have different priorities if it is privatised.
Our priorities about the impact we make on the public and the impact we make on the UK creative economy. It is not about the bottom line. So it means that we are always, in all the decisions we make, able to put public service before profit.
Channel 4 has been owned by the government since its launch in 1982 and receives its funding from advertising. The money generated is then used to commission independent producers to make programmes for the channel. According to Channel 4's financials published this week, it delivered a surplus of £74 million at the end of 2020, as well as significant digital growth.
The consultation will also review regulation of streaming services such as Netflix, Disney Plus and Amazon Prime Video. It will consider whether rules around impartiality and accuracy are needed for the platforms in order to level the playing field with broadcasters who are regulated by Ofcom. The Culture Secretary wrote in The Times that this would prevent traditional broadcasters from having to compete with one arm tied behind their backs. David English, NTD News, London.
The Ministry of Defence denies claims that Russia fired warning shots and dropped bombs in the path of a Royal Navy destroyer in the Black Sea on Tuesday. NTD's Joy Duguid brings us the latest on this.
Russia's Interfax news agency reports that a Russian military ship fired warning shots at a Royal Navy destroyer. The HMS Defender entered Russian waters in the Black Sea off the coast of the Crimea Peninsula on Tuesday. The Russian Defence Ministry was also quoted as saying that a Russian jet had dropped bombs in the path of the British warship as a warning. But Britain's Ministry of Defence denied the claim. In a statement posted on Twitter, the MOD said, "We believe the Russians were undertaking a gunnery exercise in the Black Sea and provided the maritime community with prior warning of their activity." Russia seized and annexed Crimea from Ukraine in 2014 and considers areas around the peninsula's coast to be Russian waters. But Western countries consider the peninsula part of Ukraine and reject Russia's claim to the seas around it. Joy Dugid, NTD News.
The hard-hit travel industry calls on the government for the safe return of the international travel for the peak summer period. NTD's Neil Woodrow brings us this report.
According to ABTA, travel agents, pilots, tour operators, aviation workers and cabin crew are among the thousands who will speak up for travel today. ABTA says the pandemic has been a catastrophe for the travel industry. An estimate 195,000 jobs have been lost or are at risk. Here outside Parliament, hundreds have gathered for this day of action. The protest was made up of 20 different groups within the travel and airline industry, including Airlines UK and Airports Operators Association. Among the enthusiastic peaceful protesters was Alistair Rowland, chairman of Travel Agent Association ABTA. He told me there are two aspects they are focusing on.
For government to use the traffic light system the way it was intended, and they haven't done that.
He says Portugal getting removed from the green list took away customer goodwill and the wish to travel. Rowland also talks about financial support.
Most travel businesses haven't seen any income at all since March 20 because very few people have flown anywhere. So we require some sector-specific support as an industry to be able to get through for when people can travel again.
Rowland says he likes the idea of people with both vaccinations being able to travel to green and amber list countries and return without self-isolation. But he says holidays need to be booked for this summer.
The industry really is working on fumes, and to date, government haven't listened to that.
A cabin crew member who has been on furlough most of the year told us how the company has been supportive during these tough times.
The odd flights here and there, but EasyJet have been very supportive. They've been supporting a lot of our mental health and very supportive of the crew with the way they've been. They're putting us first in a lot of instances within the company. We're quite a big priority to them. Obviously, we are the face of their company at the end of the day.
The International Travel Traffic Light System is to be reviewed on June 28th. As the day of action comes to a close, we'll wait till next week to see what the government has to say. Neil Woodrow, NTD News, London.
The pandemic has claimed another victim. A 400-year-old shop in Piccadilly Circus is closing for the last time. NTD's David English has the story.
Arthur Beale has been a London institution for more than 400 years. Established in the 16th century, the renowned yacht chandler in Piccadilly Circus sells all sorts of equipment for boats, from ropes to sailor shoes. Polar explorer Ernest Henry Shackleton was a regular customer. Even the flagpole and ropes used at Buckingham Palace used to be sourced at Arthur Beale. The shop survived 2 world wars, the plague and the Great Fire, but not the COVID-19 pandemic.
Everyone is very sad. We've had people in tears in the shop. Everybody realises that there aren't many shops like us left in London. A lot of the sort of small independents, with these historical trades, have been struggling.
The business was operating long before its neighbouring theatres in the West End were even built. The shop itself moved to several different sites, but always in central London. Back in the 16th century, the shop was surrounded by fields. Since then, the landscape has changed a lot.
One of the issues is having a chandlery business in the middle of London in the 21st century doesn't make a lot of sense.
Emptying the narrow 6th-floor building will be quite a challenge. All the items stocked and on display will need to go. The business safe will have to be taken out through a window, since the staircase is too small. A lot of boxes will be needed to put a lid on what remains of the shop.
150 years worth of artefacts, catalogues, bits of equipment, so it's going to be a pretty massive exercise.
The business was already struggling before the pandemic, but lockdowns and the absence of an online store made it impossible to afford London rent, and the landlord is selling the building. Hugh Taylor and his business partner plan to modernise the shop and use this momentum to create a brand. Their new website is already up and running.
So what we want to do is to continue the business online. We've also got our own range of sort of Arthur Beale jumpers and clothing as well, which again we want to invest in and create more of.
Within 2 weeks, Taylor will announce the opening of a new shop outside of London. It will aim to recreate the same atmosphere with old artefacts and furniture from the original. So the legend of Arthur Beale lives on, but it's no longer a London legend. David English, NTD News.
Still to come, the Tokyo Olympics are almost upon us. Japan unveils its Olympic Village, a city within a city. Find out more after the break. Thank you for watching our daily news show on YouTube. You can also watch our other programming on channel 190 on Sky TV or on Freeview via channel box on channel 271. In the meantime though, please give this video a like and hit subscribe to our channel. Have a good day.